In this slideshow, we're going to be discussing value for money. And we're going to be giving you the principles of value for money as a framework for the final exercise that you're going to be given. Value for money is defined as maximising the impact of every pound or every dollar spent. The National Audit Office defines it as the optimal use of resources to achieve intended outcomes. And the framework for value for money is made up of 3 E's: economy, efficiency, effectiveness. And along the bottom of the framework, which you'll see in the next slide, there are equity considerations. So here is the framework, and you can see that it aligns well with the log frame. You have what I call activity level here, input, output, outcome, impact. And the framework shows you where economy comes in, efficiency comes in output level, and effectiveness will come here. So input, efficiency is about how your input becomes an output, how efficient it is, and then effectiveness is about the outcome, output to outcome. As I explained, equity is along the line here, it is meant to be considered. And they give you some examples here. I'm going to give you others in the next slide. But you can see how it relates to the log frame. This is taken from the DFID manual on value for money and defines economy efficiency. So economy, are we or our agents buying inputs of the appropriate quality and the right price? Efficiency, how well do our agents convert inputs into outputs? And you saw that in the diagram. And effectiveness is how well are the outputs from an intervention achieving the desired outcome on poverty. It talks about poverty here, but it can just as easily be used for any project or looking at outcome. Some examples here of the 3 E's. Economy. We can look at the unit cost for training a nurse, the unit cost of books, the unit cost of a workshop. Efficiency can look at the proportion of deliveries attended by school birth attendants or the cost per delivery, or the number of pregnant women attending 4+ antenatal visits, the cost per 4 visits. Effectiveness takes us to the higher level, impact level. Maternal mortality reduced, neonatal mortality ratio reduced, and cost per death averted and cost per DALY. So these are indicators that will be used to measure effectiveness. Now, DFID argues that value for money is not just about the cheapest, but is about a better understanding of the costs and therefore better management of resources. There's no doubt that value for money can be very useful to compare the same costs between different projects in the same country. So let's take 2 projects in Nigeria carrying out workshops. And if you look at the unit costs of one, they're half the cost of the other projects. So clearly we need to understand why there are different costs. And it looks like there may be some genuine ways to save money. Because we know that workshops can be hugely expensive if you go to a hotel. Value for money can also be used to compare the same costs in different countries. So some work done looked at the costs in education of textbooks in Vietnam, which were 5 cents, and in Nigeria, $5. So here again, in Nigeria, they'll be asked to look at what is driving this cost of textbooks and can there be some way that this can be reduced. There may not be, it may just be more expensive to do business in Nigeria, but I'm sure there will be some underlying costs that could be reduced. The challenges to value for money are that the cheapest option could be chosen, may well be chosen, and that's not really what we're about. We're about delivering good development. There may be too much focus on unit costs rather than also focusing on results. So a lot of effort spent on collecting information on unit costs because it's relatively easy, and very little looking at efficiency and effectiveness because that's much more complicated. Some development issues are very difficult to measure using value for money. Let's take a research programme who's carrying out research, and their outcome level is about showing that this research has influenced policy. It's very difficult to look at this from a value for money lens. A programme looking at community participation, increased community, again, this is very difficult to look at through any meaningful value for money lens. There are concerns at the 3 E's, although having E as equity as a consideration, that it's not explicit enough and we should have a 4th E for equity. The Independent Commission on Aid Impact has included the 4th E in its framework. And certainly, if you don't have a 4th E there is a danger that decisions will be made without considering the equity issues. For example, people living in remote areas, it's much more expensive to deliver vaccinations, to deliver anything, because of the distances. And if you don't see that in your framework, then there's dangers that they will not get these services. Low population density, conflict zones. And these issues could be excluded if the 4th E is not in the framework. So we tend to talk about 4 E's rather than 3 E's.